some into what they're trying to accomplish. They want to know how to better go about it, perhaps. So, except, I guess, in the case of where people need to be lectured to because they're breaking the rules or doing things so, godforsakenly wrong that they just need to be told what to do, listening is important. And I grouped observation in with there because by observing people, you can get through body language and just human interactions. Observation is important in giving you information about what is going on in that person or the group that you're addressing, in their minds, and some of the personal interactions within the groups, Grange groups, let's say. And you can figure out a lot by listening and observing. Then I moved on to honesty. My number 2 was honesty, because I think the biggest thing in leadership is not to be afraid to admit what you don't know. Don't try to bamboozle people with, BS. Don't BS people. If you don't know something, admit it and go do your research and find out and come back to the group with an answer. Or connect the people to somebody else who does have the answer, maybe has a skill that a particular Grange might need, say in membership development, that you yourself might lack. Well, connect those people with somebody who can answer their question or questions and help them to gain the skills that they need to do what they need to do. As you talk to people and you listen, up there with honesty, to me, is respecting other people's opinions, whether you agree with them or not. I mean, you're going to agree some of the time and you're going to disagree some of the time, and it's okay to agree to disagree at times. But if you're going to disagree, I think it's important that you state your position and support your position so that people, again, know they're not just being bamboozled, that you have a reason for saying what you do. This specifically came up when our state Grange was, by way of example, let me say, when we were forced to sell our Grange camp, I had a particular member, one in particular, and there were many, but one in particular that bothered me for quite a while, because it bothered him that we had divested ourselves of our camp, our Grange camp. And I spent quite a bit of time explaining the situation and why we were forced into that position. And, he wanted more detail than the situation where the camp was divested. We were placed under certain legal restraints where we could not divulge certain information. And as a result of that, I just had to explain to him that I could only tell him so much. And he understood, and that was pretty much the end of that. I was able to diffuse that situation. And the next thing on my list is just being available. People don't want to chase you around either by phone or text or internet, but, to try to be available and get back to people with information if they're looking for information, or just being willing to get on the phone and talk to people for whatever time it takes to answer their questions and guide them. The other part of being available to me is visitations. And this is something I picked up from many of the previous state presidents. We have a small state. It's not that hard because we don't have a whole lot of Granges, 30 some, is to try to get out and visit them. And that, of course, is my goal. And I think as a leader, people appreciate seeing your face, because the common theme when I visit Granges is that people seem to be thankful to see your face and to meet you and come to know you. After all, those are the Grangers that put me in this position, and I not only for social reasons do I enjoy going around to Granges, but I think it's important to be a presence at Grange meetings, as much as you can. The next thing that I came up with in the idea of leadership was that as a leader, really, one of the things that a leader ought to do is provide inspiration. And to me, inspiration kind of dovetails with perseverance. I think a leader should work to be an inspiration to the members, because by inspiring people, you can help keep their spirits up. A lot of Granges have a reason to kind of lose their sense of being inspired, because maybe some of them are falling back on membership and having trouble with not only gaining new members but retaining them. And so if you can provide the Granges with tools perhaps to help them in those areas, you can allay some of their fears that they're going to go out of existence. You can give them hope. And part of the idea with perseverance is that a lot of these problems, like membership development in particular, they're not easy things. I mean, you have to persevere in your approach to membership development specifically, because it's not a one and done kind of an endeavor for a Grange. You've got to constantly be recruiting members, constantly be working at putting your name out in the public to be able to be known well enough to hopefully attract some attention, and in turn have events and different things and pull those potential members in and get them to join. Along with the inspiration, you want to keep up positive attitudes and encourage different people to do things according to the best of their abilities. Not everybody has the same abilities. So part of being a leader is to encourage people with different strengths and abilities to use those strengths and abilities to better serve the Grange and move it forward. Number 5 on my list was delegation of authority. I'm one person. Obviously, I cannot run the whole organization by myself. I have to have a willing team to be able to do what needs to be done in my, under me and my name, with my guidance, however you want to look at that. But it takes a team, and that is probably one of the most important things, is just hopefully the people that you put in positions will live up to the expectations and get done what needs to get done. To kind of bring this all around, as I ascended to this position, I keep reading, and in the book, Burnison's book, I was reading, and it's something that I really like to keep reminding myself is, yes, I'm here at the top of the organization, but this is not all about me. It's that I was put here by people who thought I could do a job as a leader, and I have to remember they put me here, and I've got a job to do, and it's to put the attention back on the organization, not for me to have any particular amount of attention or glory for what I'm doing. All that glory has to go back into the organization. The organization has to profit from what I'm doing. And hopefully that will lead us all to grow. A couple of other reflections that I had, I've gone through times in my life where I was a bit of a hot-tempered sort of person. And in my earlier years of Grange membership, I have been known. Jody saw me once blow up at somebody who just really got my goat. And I said to myself, when I got here, or before I got here, once that happened, it could never happen again. And I remember that incident every time I talk to somebody who disagrees with me, because I know that the important thing of being a leader is you have to keep your cool and you have to be reasonable. You have to reason with people. If you say something, you have to say it with authority, but you have to listen to that person's point of view, whether you agree with it or not. You may have to explain why you agree or why you disagree, but you have to be firm sometimes with reason. You can't just tell people things and not have reasons to back them up. And by way of example, we had a Grange that would like to get a hold of their money, which, because of a strange twist, is their money is actually in a trust fund held by the state Grange, and they would like nothing more than to get that money and spend it all on things that are probably worthwhile, but it would destroy that Grange, number one, and two, it would remove any possibility of that Grange ever trying to be rejuvenated. So I've had to tell this fellow several times that no, he can't have his money to go blow and just do away with his Grange as he would like. So, I haven't heard from him recently. So maybe what I said had some effect, at least for the time being. And just another couple of notes, and I'll be done. I was looking over my personality survey, and one of my top things was humor. Now, I'm like 3/4 of my nationality originates in the British Isles, so my sense of humor tends to be kind of dry. And not everybody has my type of sense of humor. And I have to realize sometimes there are times for humor in various situations, and there are times where you have to be dead serious. So, sometimes you just have to limit the humor. Another one that came up is spirituality. And one thing that my nature studies, birding in particular, has taught me about spirituality, apart from religiosity, which I am a church attender. I am not the type of person who will ever try to convince another person that they ought to follow my particular faith, which is Protestant Congregationalism. But one thing that keeps me grounded in my life as a person and a leader is what, among nature lovers and people that are outside a lot, is what they call a deeper nature connection. And it's basically realizing that when you're out in the wilderness, there is a supreme being over all of us, and that humans are just one animal of many. You've got mammals, you've got birds, you got the reptiles. They're all created by the supreme being, if you happen to ascribe to that particular type of thought. But it just, as a framework for life, my nature connections really help keep me grounded mentally and spiritually. And overall, everything else is that I love to learn. I'm one of those so-called lifelong learners. And I have a lot of varied interests. And sometimes it helps me connect to different people, because with all my interests, I can relate to different people. There's a member out in the other end of the state. We always talk about birds when we're together, that's one particular thing. But you have to use your different interests to help you relate to different people, and that helps you when you're in a leadership position, is that forming of relationships. So that is kind of my philosophy and how I go about approaching the subject of leadership. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Bob. Hey, Bob, one question.
Yes.
Before we allow other people to ask questions, if you could just reiterate your top 5 character strengths again.
Oh, sure.
And just very, very quickly,
Gladly.
talk about how they can also be a hindrance.
A hindrance, yes, that I did not get into. My top 5 are honesty, humor, spirituality, love of learning, and perseverance. In terms of a hindrance, sometimes honesty, number 1 on my list, honesty. It's a tough one, because honesty can be a hindrance, because sometimes you have to be brutally honest with people, like the fellow who wanted the money out of the Grange to go blow. And he just kept pounding away, and I just kept pounding back, that in my honest way, that, you were getting it. And finally, when he said, well, I guess this is the end of this conversation, I'm not getting anywhere with you, I said, no, blank, you're not getting anywhere with me, and you won't on that subject. So that's that. Now, the humor thing, that can be a weakness, because certainly not everybody has the same sense of humor. And sometimes you may say something that you think is funny, but maybe it's offending to somebody. So what I really try to think about before I say anything is to think twice. And sometimes you just are better off biting your tongue and saying nothing than trying to crack a joke, because people don't all have the same sense of humor. Insofar as spirituality goes, like I said, I don't proselytize. I believe what I believe, and I think everybody else is free to believe and should best believe what they believe. But if you were to ask me, I would be happy to tell you my spiritual beliefs, some of which I have already expounded. And the prime one is that I don't personally believe that humans are innately any better than any of the other animal orders on the earth. I believe we all have our place. The love of learning, well, on occasion, I have a lot of rather arcane interests, which extend to collecting things, antiques, but some of them are more arcane. I'm interested in evolution, cosmology, particle physics. I guarantee if I got into a discussion with you on some of those, I would probably bore you to tears. And that's something I have to really remember, because I don't want to bore people to tears because they're not interested in what I'm interested in. And I think a number 5 for me was perseverance. And maybe sometimes I like to persevere where others would have given up. But I will tell you, perseverance is probably one of the best lessons I've learned from the Grange in my life, because it's what got me through the 2 years that it took to settle my mother's estate after she passed away. And I have to say, I just now, 3 years after she passed away, got a refund check from the government, from the IRS, which we paid because they told us we owed it, but we didn't, because what we paid, they later refunded. anyway, it's through Pearson. I was at one point, I was ready to give up, and I said, no, I can't give up. You know, it's a significant amount of money. And I persevered and I persevered, and the check came the other day. Of course, I still don't know quite how I'm going to, it's made out to my mother's estate and me as executor. The first check that came was my brother as executor. He was never executor. It came in the name of my mother's estate, which hasn't actually physically or legally existed in over a year. So that's my next puzzle, is to figure out how this thing is going to get cash. But perseverance. So a good lesson to go by, I think, and not just in estates, but in life in general.
Right. So Bob has brought up, he had a couple of bullets that he said that were very important, in my opinion. You know, be available, be responsive, be present. These are all key components in everything, right? I mean, in our relationships, personally and professionally, in our jobs, in our Grange, in just in how we deal with the cashier at the store, right? I mean, these are very key points. Does anyone have any questions they want to shoot to Bob? And it's okay if you don't.
It'd be better if you did. I'd know you were listening.
I do.
Go ahead.
As a new president, the difficult thing is because I'm reading as much as I can, and I'm reading that we don't even vote when there is a vote. We're supposed to lead and listen, and yet you're saying there are times when I want to say what I think is okay or what might be appropriate. And is that bad?
I guess it all depends on, I know a little bit, Stephanie, of where you're coming from and some of the things in your Grange, and without giving up personal details, I would say that you can speak your mind, but in speaking your mind, you have to be very careful at times, knowing that if you say what you're really thinking, you might step on toes. And I think sometimes if the integrity of your Grange is going to be harmed by stepping on those toes, that sometimes certain things might be better left unsaid, no matter how much you want to say them. There's another Grange in a different corner of the state where there are some members of a family, of a particular member who's been a thorn in the side of several estate president. And when one goes to said Grange, one has to be careful not to say anything negative about said member, because president doesn't necessarily know what those family members think of their relative or how you might insult them. And that should never be the purpose of any leader should at any cost try to avoid stepping on anybody's toes or insulting anybody, even by saying the wrong thing to a family member, which is just a good leadership maxim, I think, is to be honest, but avoid stepping on toes.
Yeah. We have older members who've carried the Grange for the longest time, and we've got newer members who are new to all of it. And I'm trying so hard to blend them together. And it's a process and a project, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, you don't want to let on to problems with new members because you may scare them away. On the other hand, you don't want to scare away old members because you're going to make them possibly feel unwanted or unappreciated. So it's a balancing act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, back to what Stephanie's question, right? When you had asked about the being able to state your position. Yeah, I think Bob hit it on the head early on when he said, if you're in disagreement, right? State your reason and the purpose for your reason. And as long as you keep emotion out of it, right? You're not influencing either side.
Part of conflict resolution is bringing parties together who may not agree and having them speak their minds on neutral ground, getting the feelings out in the open so you don't have simmering feelings, and letting people come to an agreement, or just come to an agreement to disagree peaceably and go on and work for the betterment of the organization without letting those disagreements rip the organization apart. That's the nutshell of conflict resolution, as I understand it.
All right. Well, we're gonna move on to Duane Hamp, the past president of the Washington State Grange. Duane, same question for you. Your leadership style based on your character strength survey, and how those can also be a hindrance to you.
All right. Well, my number one is honesty. And I mean, that's a great way to go, because everybody knows exactly where you're headed, what you want, be it the job description or whatever it is. Everybody knows. It's not like hint around the corner or anything. In my particular case, and I had it as a separate one of my top 5, but I think I'm going to put it in with the honesty part, is that I tend to be short and blunt, to the point. Anybody who gets an email from me or a text, if you get past 3 sentences, it's a wondrous day, because they're usually never that long. I had a membership director that it was probably about 2.5 years before I got to 3 sentences to an email to him. So, and when I did, he was ecstatic and actually called me on the phone. But so short, blunt is, it can be effective. It can work very well for you, because there's no BS. There's nothing, everybody understands. But at the same time, sometimes the lack of finesse, I guess is the best word I can use for it, can actually end up giving you a little bit of a challenge as time goes on. So honesty is my number one. Short and blunt. I guess I could probably add to that one. One of my other highlights was communication. I think we all know that communication is by far part of number one of being a leader, letting everybody know exactly what it is you're looking for, what you want done, timely manner, whatever it may be, that really enters into it. So honesty is great, but it can be a hindrance, especially if you put my little sub number one in there with the short and blunt to the point. So that's my number one. Number 2, kindness, doing favors, good deeds for others, is good. You can get a lot done. The only problem with that is on the negative side, is that then all of a sudden people can think that you're a pushover, which in my case is not the way it is, but they can assume that, and then they start thinking that they can take the position or go with it in their own way, and then you just got to put your foot down and say, no, this is not the way it is. And so the kindness part is definitely a good one. I think we all should be kind to each other and understanding. And but there again, on the negative side, can be very detrimental if you let it go. So being that leader, you got to stay focused. That's the biggest thing of all of these, I feel. And what I tried to do in my term was stay focused. There's going to be those that are going to try and draw you sideways. I mean, that's even a life for a worker. I owned my own business, so had plenty of employees, and even at the state headquarters. I'll back up a little bit. I had an auto repair garage. I did not have any female technicians at that time. They were few and far between. I did not have any, so it was a shop full of guys. I think we can all relate to what probably a shop full of guys is like working with. When I become state president, I went to an office of 5 women, 1 male. You talk about Duane having a learning curve. There was a zipper on my lips because for 40 some odd years running my own business, what I used to be able to get away with saying, all of a sudden it was like, if zip shut. So if you talk about a learning curve, boy, howdy. So my number 3 was forgiveness, letting those who have done wrong, I'd give them another chance. And depending upon what it was, if that forgiveness did bite me in the butt a few times because they didn't learn from the first time or the second time. And so then you have to get a little more forceful and resolve whatever situation that had caused. And so forgiveness is great. We give each other, we all make mistakes. We're all human. And by the end of the day, we'll make one, but hopefully people understand that it's not concurrent. But yeah. My 4th was curiosity. Always trying to learn new ways. I mean, I think that was one of the best things when I was Washington State president. There were quite a few of us that had come in about the same time, went to national, got some friendships going with different people, and to be able to call and say, and one of them sitting right here, Jody, I got this going on. What do you think? You know? And so we'd start bouncing stuff off, and he'd do the same thing to me. And big thing was that he'd do it on his way home from a Grange meeting, which he had 45 minutes to go to get home from the farthest. My case from the state office to my home was 5.5 hours. Took me an hour to get out of the county. So he usually got a lot longer phone calls when I was driving than when he was driving, but it was kind of fun. But those relationships gave us the opportunity to get different perspectives, and Washington doesn't do things like Connecticut does the same way. And what I'd always tell people, we're all Grangers. We all have the blue manual. We all do Grange, but we all do it different. And so that curiosity is a wondrous thing, because then you start learning how other states, other people think about, the things we do in the book. But like I say, we just do them a little different. And that curiosity, the learning, makes you a better Granger when you get back home. And you can do that same thing in your own state. You say, well, I go to my Grange meeting, I go to Pomona. Well, maybe think about going to a community Grange that's across town, or, the other corner of the county, just to see, what they do, or those personalities. And so then maybe be better for you as a leader when you go to Pomona and you understand where they're coming from. Those are things of the curiosity that's just a fascinating thing, especially my wife Chris and I have had the opportunity to go to a lot of different states in the country, and it's fascinating as far as the people. Everybody's got their own little twist on everything, but at the same time, we're all Grangers and we're all family, and that's what makes the whole organization what it is today, I believe. My number 5 is humility. Humility. You know, as far as I'm not a bragger, I don't, get up in front of a crowd and say, I've done this, 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 and this, and therefore you should follow me. That's not how I work. I'm probably, you put me in a room of 10 people and there's going to be probably 3 or 4 that are going to be, I've done this and I do this and I do that. You're probably going to be looking at me. Bob was making the comment as far as there's sometimes it's best to not say anything. And that's one of those circumstances where you sit, listen, and let them talk, and then use that information to gain later on. And you may find that that person, you get a job in your leadership position that needs somebody that whatever that job may be, they may actually fit and actually become a very good leader in that area. But just sitting there and talking about what I've done and where I've been and all that doesn't work. I don't think that's just not me. And so, yeah, there's a lot of times if I'm being quiet, it's because I'm listening and I just don't post about myself in that way. As far as some of the leadership styles, I'm definitely one, you don't have to do it all. You can't do it all. You need to find people who can help be part of the team to be able to achieve whatever it is, work, Grange, whatever, to achieve your goals. You can't know everything, and the more people you can surround yourself with and get them to communicate with you, you're going to come out a better person, a better leader, and it just works for the end result. And a lot of times, the more people that you can get involved, you can come up with an idea and it'd be a great idea, but if you don't have people willing to help you, to work with you, and maybe it's your idea, but then you pass it on to someone else as far as that after you explain it to them, they understand what you want and they can take it, and then maybe they can get more people on board. And pretty soon you've got the whole community thinking the way that you really wanted them to. You didn't do it. You got a few key people in the right spots to talk to more people to get it to blossom and grow. And that's when you just sit back and go, hey, this is working. This is the way it's all supposed to come together. So don't try and do it yourself. You won't succeed. You may for a little short term, but long term, you're not going to succeed because it takes more than one person to lead. And I just went blank. Look at that. Something else I in my leadership was finding people who maybe really didn't think that they were leaders. I had one of my favorite stories. There was a gal. She was very involved. Got kind of on the shirt tail of a state deputy that we had, who had been, in fact, she was a spouse of a past state president also. And those two, she just hung on to her. And if the state deputy did something, the other one was right there, would help her, would help do whatever needed to be done. And I kind of really, in the back of my mind, felt, she could be a leader. But you talk to her and she was, oh, I couldn't do that. I can't do that. I couldn't do that. And so finally, one time we had a seminar workshop thing going on, and we broke into groups. And so I played dirty pool I put the two of them each in different breakout groups. And the one who had been following the state deputy around, I made her the leader of the breakout groups. And she come to me, and we had a little break in between the time that I did all these assignments and the time of the actual workshop. And she come to me, and I mean, she was literally almost in tears, shaking in her boots. I mean, it was, you start to think, did I do the right thing? But, no, come on, you can do it. I'll be in your group. And, if for some reason it doesn't work, I'm there to help you. And she got up, and it took her a little bit to get kind of started, help her a little bit, work through it. After that seminar, that workshop, later on that afternoon, she came to me and she goes, no, that wasn't that bad. That actually kind of worked. I think I could do that. Well, long story short, I created a monster because she became one of my best leaders around. It got her out of her shell. She realized she could do it. And from then on, I mean, she still hung out with the state deputy, but if there was something I needed done, or even in her local Grange, I got stories back that she was just going nuts. The only person that really kind of sort of complained was her husband, because at home she started being a little bit more in control. So that was the humorous side of it. But so it's being a leader is looking to be able to find people, help them, nurture them, and get them to be, succession leaders. Unfortunately, my gal moved to Florida. It was where her husband was. So, it's, you got to take a chance with people, be able to get them to be willing to at least give it a try, be there, and a lot of times it works. It may not be to quite that degree, but at least get them out there and get them to try. And that's what being a leader is, I think, all about. Being able to find people, because we've got to have people willing to step up to the plate, be able to keep our local Granges, our Pomonas, even our state Granges going. We got to have succession and be able to keep our Granges going and positive in the community. So I think in that, I hope I answered the questions that you were looking for. My short and blunt and to the point scenario. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm totally open.
Any questions for Duane? Phil?
Jody, Duane, I think one of the things you sort of alluded to, that one of the things about being a leader is taking a risk. Do you think that that whole concept of having somebody take on a different role was taking a risk and maybe being willing to fail?
Most definitely, but you got to give them the encouragement, and and that was one of the things once she found out in this particular instance, that group, because originally I had said I'd be floating from group to group and making sure things are going right, and I during the breaks just told her, I said, okay, I'll be in this group the entire time. Don't worry, there will be no failure. It will all work out. And like I said, helped a little bit at the very beginning, and then all of a sudden you could just see it all evolve and coming about. And so, yeah, you got to be able to take a risk. And anybody, I think, would say, especially becoming a state master or president, excuse me, it's a risk. You first get in there and it's like, oh boy, what did I do? Why did I say yes?
You had said a couple of key things, in my opinion, Duane, right? I mean, as the leader, right? I mean, the elected leader. If you're the president, you're the elected leader, but depending on the scenario, you're not always the leader. Sometimes as the leader, you've got to be there to be the supporter, right? Which strengthens the team, which just strengthens your statement of you can't do it all. You need to surround yourself with a team that can carry the agreed agenda and focus for the group, right? And that's very important. You can't do it all. And then you also hit upon, the numerous telephone calls that you and I used to have on a semi-regular basis. And just for the record, in 5.5 hours, I can be almost to Baltimore, Maryland, but just saying, okay? So, but that's important, right? The hope, our hope, Todd's and my hope is that the participants in this are going to have like-minded, sure they are, like-minded people in these participants, where if you run into a challenge, right now there's 25 people that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I've got this situation, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Right? That's a good leader. A good leader doesn't just drop the shoulder and forge in and tell everybody how it's going to happen. They go in well-informed and act as the moderator in many cases. So please, our hope is that we get to over the next 4 or 5 months, we get very comfortable with one another. And as we're faced with challenges in our Granges, or if you develop a personal friendship with somebody in your life, you have somebody to call and bounce things off of. That's very important. Don't bear the burden on your own. Any other questions for Duane?
I have a comment as much as a question, and that was that you listed humility. And I think that just summed up part of, I think, what I was trying to say in a different way. And I like the way that you put it. That was your way of explaining that you cannot do it all, but being humble enough to know that you can't do it all. It's just really so important.
And that's, you got to be comfortable with yourself and realizing that no, not everybody's going to agree with you. There were many times I had, like you did, Bob, different issues, different things. They just, Duane, that's not right. And go, well, try to convince me different. And sometimes they could. Sometimes they really couldn't. It was just their opinion, and so, well, I have to do, not every decision I made was what Duane thought was best. It's what Duane thought was best for the organization. And you always got to keep that, be it if you own a business or you're a supervisor in a business, or that goes to relationships. I mean, you got to do, it's not for what's the best for Duane, it's what's the best for my wife and I, or, the business, or be it Grange or your church or whatever it may be. It's yes, it's your opinion, but it's my opinion as far as what I believe is best for blank.
Good point.
Any other questions? So sometimes, right, you get the nonverbal communication when somebody thinks you're maybe leading into risky territory. My good friend Phil Prelli was chairman of the executive committee when I was president of Connecticut State Grange, and I could always tell when I was getting on thin ice because he would go like this. I'm surprised this side of his head is not bald from the number of times that man did this.
He's got too much hair, and I'm going to take some of it if he doesn't watch it.
So, all right. Any other questions?
I
Gentlemen,
have 2 housekeeping items. There is a member who just has user on their name for the Zoom. I don't know who that person is. You are muted if you're trying to speak. Okay, I guess we'll remain in this.
Hey, Todd, I think that was Karen's. Karen's came on twice with the
Nope, nope.
user and then Karen McDonald's.
She says she's only on once. I've already talked. to her,
Okay.
so.
And then you got Timothy.
I already have Timothy.
Yeah.
Yep, user is unmuted right now. All right.
Okay. The other thing is there were some questions about the character strength profile. In your email is a link to the VIA character profile that you can take in your free time and to see where your strengths lie. Unfortunately, I didn't reply to the email that I had sent using the link or sent to send the link for tonight, but didn't change the title. So it is called the Zoom information for tomorrow night's Leadership Academy, but the link is included in there. All right.
We are going to be using those in 2 weeks. So please take the character strength survey between now and then, and we're going to be talking about the top 5, and our focus is going to be around how they can be a hindrance, right? We need to understand our weaknesses far more than we need to understand our strengths to make us better leaders. So we will be talking about the top five strengths. So for those of you that know me and know me very well, ironically, love is number 24 for me. So, which is absolute last. So, so go figure.
It's funny that we're always linked together because love is number 2 on my list.
So, yeah. Well,
Opposites attract.
That's it. Also, please read, if you haven't already, at least the first 25 pages of the 5 Graces of Life and Leadership. There are a lot of thought-provoking things in this book. We're going to just touch on the first 25 pages. If you divide the number of pages in this book by 9, there's 9 more meetings. That's 25 pages. So just so you know, we'll be covering 25 pages per session. So, if you, I think everybody does have the book, right, Todd? We've been able to get the book. to everybody?
There's only one person that I didn't have time to send it to,
All
but
right.
everyone else should have received it.
They'll get theirs, and then we'll be all set. All right.
And if you haven't cracked the book, it's very easy reading. Don't let the number of pages scare you.
Oh yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's easy reading and it's really thought provoking and well worth reading. I mean, it's a really good book.
All right. Are there any questions? So for the next go around, which is in 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to you're going to do the VIA strengths character strength survey, and we're going to review the book. We're going to talk about your leadership style via your strengths, and we're gonna go from there. Everybody should have received the syllabus that Todd sent out, and that gives you the entire schedule with the dates and the speakers and everything. We're still trying to iron out the fundraising speaker, but we will do that. And gentlemen, Bob and Duane, I can't thank you enough for you taking the time to do this for us tonight. Bob, I know you have to get on another Zoom, and Duane, I know you're getting ready for supper. So, you know.
Actually, I'm going to go back outside and jump on a bulldozer and do some more dirt moving. So
Sounds like fun.
There you go.
yeah.
All right. So everyone, I can't thank you enough. Hopefully this first meeting was worth your time and effort. We're excited about this program. Hopefully you are too. And you have any questions, reach out to Todd or myself, and we'll go from there. If not, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.